You weren't betrayed by an enemy. You were betrayed by something softer, by a gentle smile, a warm gaze, and a kind word spoken at the moment you needed comfort the most. And you believed it, because the world raised you on a lie. It told you that if you were kind enough, patient enough, and good enough, the world would respond in kind. It promised that love means honesty, vulnerability creates loyalty, and being real means being rewarded. But now you're left with the aftermath, a heart picked apart by people who smiled as they took, a mind bruised, not by fists, but by silence, disappointment, and slow erosion. You're not stupid. You were trained to believe that sincerity guarantees safety, that if your intentions were pure, you couldn't lose. But you did, because you never learned the rule Machiavelli taught 500 years ago. Men are driven not by goodness, but by necessity. They don't stay because they love you. They stay because it's convenient. They stay because your silence makes it easier. And when they've taken all they can, they vanish, quietly, without warning, without apology. Let me be clear. This is not a video for comfort seekers. This is not another be your best self monologue. This is war. A war fought in silence. A war you didn't even realize you were losing. For those who've been drained by being too available, too forgiving, too easy to reach, and even easier to read. If you've ever asked yourself, why do the manipulators always win? Why do the good ones always end up bleeding? Why does giving everything get me nothing? Then stop right now and look again, not with the eyes of a dreamer, but through the mind of a strategist. Because here, we don't teach you to be softer. We teach you to be sharper, more dangerous, without ever raising your voice. It begins by unlearning the oldest lie you've ever swallowed. Goodness guarantees protection. It doesn't. What protects you is presence, perception, and power. Now ask yourself, are you ready to take it back? Rule 1, the hidden pain of surrender. How softness becomes erosion. It doesn't bruise, it doesn't bleed, but it breaks something deep inside you, quietly. It's the kind of pain that doesn't scream, because it was never allowed to. It whispers, it festers, it grows in silence. You were taught to call it strength. They looked at you, calm and composed, and assumed you were untouched, untouchable. They saw your patience and called it wisdom. Your forgiveness was mistaken for virtue, your stillness for peace. But what they didn't see, what they'll never see, is what it cost you to stay that still. You've been touched more times than you dare admit, not by violence, but by erosion, by people who leaned on your empathy until they drained it. They took your compassion as permission. They mistook your loyalty for blindness. And the worst part? You let them. Not because you were weak, but because you were hopeful. You believed they would change, that if you stayed soft, they would eventually soften too. But they didn't. They took and took, until you were nothing more than a tool they could use and discard. You stayed because that's what you were taught to do. Stay kind, stay good, stay available, even when it hurts. But here's the truth. Staying when it hurts isn't strength. Knowing when to walk away. Machiavelli would tell you, if your silence keeps the peace but costs you your soul, it is not virtue. It is surrender. How many times have you surrendered, not in battle, but in the everyday betrayals of yourself? Rule 2, the power of unreadability, how predictability becomes a trap. You've been bleeding quietly and calling it strength, but bleeding is not strength. It's a signal, a warning you've ignored for too long. You think if you just keep enduring, it will get better. But endurance without recognition is not love. It's erasure. and you deserve more than being erased in someone else's comfort. This is your permission to stop performing peace for people who thrive on your silence. Stop shrinking so others feel tall. Stop mistaking availability for virtue. Let them say you've changed. Let them call you distant, cold, unrecognizable. That's what people say when they lose access to the version of you that never said no. You are not their mirror anymore, not their comfort, not their emotional sponge. You are something else now, something heavier, sharper, unbreakable. You are sovereign. Rule 3. Emotional architecture. The strategy of withdrawal. You weren't born soft. You were trained to be. From the moment you could speak, you were rewarded for being agreeable, for smiling when it hurt, for staying quiet when something felt wrong, for saying yes when every fiber of your being screamed no. And every time you complied, you were told, "Good job." That's maturity. That's how you get along. What they really meant was, that's how you make yourself easy to manage. The world doesn't just tolerate your programming, it feeds on it. We glorify self-sacrifice, romanticize being the bigger person, praise those who give endlessly, and abandon them the moment they need something back. Machiavelli understood what most people don't. Transparency is currency, and you've been giving it away cheaply. Every time you explain your pain, every time you justify your standards, you're handing others a map. Maps are for people who want to find you, but also for people who want to corner you. This isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's subconscious. People gravitate toward what they can control, even if they call it love. And when they've learned your pattern, they test it. They push. They pull. They vanish and reappear just enough to keep you guessing. And the worst part? You stay. You stay because you want to believe it's real. You were taught to see the good, even while being drained by the bad. Rule 4. The sovereign shift. How to become unpredictable. You've been operating under the false belief that vulnerability equals connection. But in the wrong hands, vulnerability is leverage. And now it's time to unplug the machine. Stop narrating your healing. Stop giving people the user manual to your heart. Stop believing that exposure equals intimacy. You move with intent. You speak with restraint. You become unreadable, not because you're hiding, but because you've finally stopped leaking power. Machiavelli didn't advocate cruelty. He advocated control, presence, mystery, and strategic silence. True power isn't about how loudly you speak. It's about how carefully you are listened to, even when you say nothing. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let them say you've changed. And you have. Because you've stopped being their tool. You've stopped being easy to read, easy to predict, and easy to control. You've done the inner work. You've buried the old identity, the one who overshared, overgave, and overexplained. Now it's time to move differently. Not louder, but smarter. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be sovereign. You don't need to be understood to be respected. If this resonates with you, subscribe to Virtù and stop chasing validation. Start mastering the art of strategic silence, unpredictability, and presence. Comment below and share which principle you're ready to implement first. Let's rise together and break free from the cycle of self-betrayal.